Now let's get some more analysis on this with Jim Corr, a political activist and musician from the Irish band The Corrs. Joining us live now from Belfast. So your home country, Ireland, has been bailed out by the IMF and the EU, but the tough austerity measures have been a part of this deal. Tell me, how bad is it for the majority of people there? Are they losing their homes? They're losing their jobs? Can they afford their mortgages?
Well, not yet, but let me be very clear. What we're actually experiencing here, I believe, is a top-down engineered financial crash, an implosion of the world economy by design, designed so as to effect a corporate takeover of not just our own country, but many other countries around Europe. And now we're having to submit to draconian welfare health cuts that are going to impoverish the Irish people more. There's people in this country are afraid to put on the heating because they don't know where the money is going to come from. This is absolutely dreadful. The Irish people are being made to pay for the sins, the contrived sins of elite international bankers. We had a situation where 34 billion of taxpayer money was pumped into the bottomless pit known as Anglo-Irish Bank. It recently came out who the bondholders were. We bailed out probably the richest family in the world, the Rothschilds. We bailed out Goldman Sachs. I mean, this is just unbelievable. This is Robin Hood in reverse. We've got, this is the poor and the middle class bailing out the super rich.
So you're saying when it comes to the issue of blame, the blame lies at the top of the economic food chain, the banks, the governments and fraudulent practices?
Absolutely. Listen, through an expansion or contraction of the money supply in the system, but the people behind the money issuing central banks of the world are able to move a great many people between prosperity and poverty and grades thereof.
But if you're talking about the Rothschilds being financially saved here with the big bailouts, if it's the money that's going to the people who caused the crisis, then what's going to stop them from continuing to practice their fraudulent policies if they're just going to get money at the end of the day?
Nothing, unless people wake up en masse. Look, we should have followed Iceland's example. What has Iceland done? They're now exiting the recession. They've defaulted on their debt. They've burnt the bondholders. They've said no to the EU and the IMF, and now they're on the road to recovery. That is the model that all the European countries need to follow, because Portugal is next, Spain is next.
All right, now you mentioned countries like Portugal and Spain. Let's take it that broader scope here. When you look at Ireland and other European countries, as you said, like Portugal, Spain, Greece, shouldn't they just simply have to accept that they need to cut their public spending because their debts are intense? What's the alternative?
Absolutely not. Well, look, we are actually a very, very rich nation, and a lot of Irish people are waking up to this here. We've got oil and gas reserves off the west coast of this country which could amount to possibly trillions of euros worth of gas and oil. We could solve our debt problems practically overnight if we wanted. Ultimately, the solution is, the root cause of the problem is, no, we're not printing our own debt-free money. That's what we need to do. Like Abraham Lincoln's greenback, we need to get back to printing our own debt money. We need to get out of the EU and back into European Economic Area, where we can set our own monetary policy and not be dictated by Brussels in terms of monetary policy that is set up to suit Germany and France to the detriment of the other countries in the EU. That's the thing. And as soon as the EU and the euro is, it should be confined to the dustbin of history, and soon.
But OK, you're saying that Ireland should get out of the EU, but you were saying that a moment ago that Ireland is very wealthy here. Do you really think Ireland can stand on its own 2 feet if indeed it does turn its back on the EU?
Absolutely. We should be the breadbasket of Europe. We've had a situation in 1973, before we joined the EU, we had at least 300,000 active farmers in this country. We now have about 120,000 farmers, and only 30,000 of those are full-time. The farmers need to get back to growing crops again. The fishing industry has been decimated as well. We've handed the EU about 200 billion worth of our fishing. We could be self-sustaining completely, and as I say, with the oil and the gas reserves off the west coast of this country, we will be able to solve our debt problems in a very short space of time.
So you're saying that getting Ireland out of the EU would solve your debt problems, but talk to me about this. 2010 has been a chaotic year for the entire Eurozone, a huge protests all across the continent. What can be done to quell this anger and return some sense of normality, do you think?
Well, I think obviously our government, and I can speak for Ireland, they're pandering to the EU, being dictated by EU. I came out and I warned the Irish people that the agenda, 2 years ago, the agenda was the erosion of our national sovereignty, and now we have budgetary policy being dictated by Brussels. We can no longer call ourselves a sovereign nation, and that's what's been set up for the rest of the EU countries. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. We need a complete overhaul of the political system in the country, and to install people of integrity in positions of power that have genuinely got the best interests of the Irish people at heart.
Now, the Eurozone is a large European neighbourhood. Now, OK, we've had some countries that are stumbling here and having economic problems. Is the Eurozone failing?
I believe it is. You know, as Nigel Farage says recently, we can only hope that it is confined to the dustbin of history and soon. That is the only way that we're going to solve our problems, if we start setting up and using our own monetary policy, printing our own debt-free money. And, you know, that's the only way that we're going to get out of this. So we need to withdraw from the euro and fast.
Now, with Germany poised to shoulder a lot of the burden when it comes to the financially strained members of the Eurozone, how much longer will Germany stand here as a backup and say, all right, we'll bail you out again? How much more time does Germany have to do this?
Well, you know, it's a good question. You know, where is all the money coming from? It's basically other European countries are borrowing from other European countries. I mean, it's a crazy situation, but you have to remember that the IMF and the ECB, they can print money literally out of thin air through the fractional reserve system and charge interest on it. And it's massive legalised fraud, in my opinion, being able to print money out of thin air and then charge interest on it. And what's going to happen if they're pouring billions of euros into the economy, like the Fed has been doing in America? It's going to cause massive inflation.
So if it's the members in the banking systems and up in the governments here who are using these fraudulent practices, lining their pockets with these bailouts, are these the ones that should be dragged out into the streets and held to account? Where should the blame truly lie, and how can the public go about having this done?
Well, it's about, you know, I would not advocate violence in any way, but, you know, it's about creating our own new systems. Here in Ireland, we've got local communities are setting up this new system called local exchange and trading. It's about bartering and trade. And, you know, that's one way of doing it. As I said, the other way is getting back to perhaps printing our own debt-free money, perhaps reintroducing the debt. But very much part of the solution is identifying the problem. I know there's an excellent documentary that people should watch out there called The Money Masters, and it explains everything.
All right, Jim Corr from the band The Corrs and a political activist, live for us in Belfast. Thank you.